Hi, everybody. Oh, second class, second digital class, second week. Just give a moment for people to turn up. See if anyone is going to come in and join us today. Just doing a little background reading, seeing, preparing for questions. Right, okay. So, this is the second class um, whilst we're all in isolation mode. So, hopefully, we can get some more people to join us today, get some martial arts dialogue and conversation going, see if we can get some questions answered, get some debate going, and see if we can learn something. I've always thought that there are no such things as um, an inability to learn. I think you can learn something from everything. It may not always be a positive experience, but there are things to be learned. Um, so something like this in our modern technology is ideal because it gives us that platform to be able to interact, a lot more easily. So, you know, we could have conversations, face to face conversations with people thousands of miles away. It's still amazing if you think about what that's actually doing. It's amazing. People can learn so much. You can do things face to face via this kind of thing, um, or on Skype. People take tests for things. You could have an A level maths test. Because the person who is assessing you can see, so they can see that you're writing down. They can hear that there's no external things going on, and you are in a test condition. So it's amazing. You couldn't do that when I was at school. So the things that technology is facilitating us is brilliant. So particularly if you think of it from a martial arts point of view, because there's so much opportunity for interaction with other people. We can talk to students all around the world. If you're a Taekwondo student, you can talk to somebody in the States or in Korea or in Japan and have an intellectual and stimulating and educational conversation with someone who has an interest in a topic that you're doing, and they live so far away that it's almost impossible. The likelihood of you meeting them is almost impossible, and yet there you are having a conversation about karate kata or taekwondo pattern. So it's amazing. Hello, James. James is here. Um, Even just looking at James's name, I start to smile because I know every time I look at James, he's always smiling. So even just seeing his name makes me want to smile because I know he's probably smiling. So hello, James. And as James predicted last week, it is just James and I again. So let's wait and see if we have any conversations or questions, anything we can learn from today. James and I have been talking through the week. Actually, we're quite conversive. We talk quite a lot. Um, so I think James and I are all talked out. We need other people to come in and interject some new topics or ask some new questions so that we can get our teeth into something and get a debate going about something. I think people have a tendency to expect instructors in any field, whatever it is, you expect them to know everything. And I've never thought that a teacher that I follow in whatever it is knows everything. I've never expected that, because I think I'm intelligent enough to know that nobody knows everything. But the teacher who's teaching you something knows a lot about that subject. And if you start trying to ask questions around that subject that the teacher's not familiar with, you can't expect them to know everything. So, what you can do is give them time and facilitate them to go away and look that up so that they can come back and say, well, actually, it's this. And you might have gone and looked it up as well. And then you come back and say, well, my research actually suggested this. And that sparks a debate. And martial debate or martial conversation is what we're here for. You know, we can't spend 1,000 hours a day kicking and punching. You know, we do that all the time. The, there's other bits, there's other elements to being a martial artist, and debate and conversation is probably the one that we can access the most. So a student should be able to call me up and say, Sarah, I've read this and it's talking about this. And I didn't really agree with it because I thought it was more this. What do you think? And then I'd put my bit in and I'd say, well, I think it's this. And then it would go from there. So um, to just think that one person is right or one person knows everything, I think that's foolish. So I think everyone should be doing everything they can to go out and learn as much as they can, and then they can debate that with other people and have conversations. It might change their view, it might change the other person's view, but it's all martial related. It's all martial education, and it's all development. Let's see what we've got here. So I suggested to James that he go and watch a film called The Birth of the Dragon, which is one of those Bruce Lee biographies that really isn't. I know that Shannon and Linda Lee aren't particular fans of it. Um, I think it is more just a dramatization, really. It's not certainly not authorized um, or official. It's just a story built around something to do with Bruce Lee. And in fact, the film is more about one of his students than about Bruce. And it doesn't paint Bruce in a good light. It really focuses more on, saying that he was cocky and arrogant. And I suppose he was a little bit, but back in those days, I suppose it was difficult not to be, considering how good he was. A little big headedness, I suppose could be forgiven then. Um, but it's a good film, so I suggested to James he should watch it because it would give us the opportunity to have a debate. So James could come back and say, I've watched this and I think this. What do you think? And I say, I think this. And then, and there we go. But James is telling me that he hasn't had time to get around to it yet. So um, when he does, I'm sure James will have an insurmountable quantity of questions that we can get our teeth stuck into. So, yes, homeschooling with his son. So James is talking about things he's noticed in his research with Bruce Lee, and he's talking about Bruce Lee's stances, always having the best leg forward. Um, different, the stances are different. I think if you research enough of Bruce Lee's books and his interviews, what he tries to make clear is that it isn't there isn't a set way. So he's talking about no stance is the best stance. However, in a given situation, so let's say if he was throwing a front kick and he was throwing the front kick midsection and he was throwing it midsection in the rain and midsection on the person he was hitting, the person was 6'3". So he might give an indication that a particular stance is valid here, but there are many things around that him say this stance is best for this within that set of criteria, not just a front stance is best for a front kick at all times. It has a set of parameters that he sort of suggests that I like to do it from this stance, bearing in mind that he was about 5'2" or 5'4". You know, he was tiny and weighed about 7 or 8 stone. So stances and things vary depending on your weight or your strength or your height or your flexibility level. So I think in part what Bruce was trying to say is that don't commit yourself to accepting that any given block, kick, punch, or stance is set for any given situation. It's all dependent on the fight. And then if someone does this, you can react with this. The difference, I suppose, in comparison of Chung Yi Kwan to Jeet Kune Do is that rather than saying that this is the way, what we say is that there should be an absence of thought. So a student practice all of the stances. He should practice all of the kicks, all of the locks, but never really from the same place twice. Never using the same stance, never using the exact same block or moving one way or the other, making it always as varied as possible. Because what you're trying to do is present your mind with different experiences of doing a particular thing or reacting to a particular strike. So rather than committing a set thing to memory and then drilling that in with repetition, the Chung Yi Kwan principle is if you can do it enough ways in all variety of stances and blocks and movements, at some point when your brain clicks in and says, this is the one that works for me, then that's the one that will stay. And so when you practice those set of drills or skills from then on, it's done in a way that your brain accepts that it works for you. So rather than me saying always do this in front stance or always do this block if you're attacked by this punch, we don't accept that. So our way is if something comes in, we will do a maneuver or a skill to deal with that. And then if we practice that enough times, it will be as varied as possible. And we will try to tweak it each time we do it. Because if it doesn't feel right then, and you do it again next week or next month, but this time you change legs or you change the depth of a stance or you change the angle of a block, you just tweak something that makes your brain say, oh, now that works for me. And once you know that, it isn't a decision that you make, oh, I prefer this one. We're not asking you what you prefer. Your brain, your body, it will all work together and it will tell you, yes, I feel comfortable with this works. And then you have a platform on which to build that kind of thing. And once you've got that set in your mind, then you forget it. Gone. Because you don't have time in a fight to stop and think about what you're going to do or hope that you can react fast enough. Because if somebody's already thrown a strike at you, if I throw a punch at you, I've decided that I'm going to punch and the punch is now coming at you. At that point, when you realize you're in danger, you can't think faster than the punch about what you're going to do because the punch is already coming. The train's already left. You can't pre-think something that's already happening. So the best way to facilitate you being as fast as possible, as fast as you can be, is to not think and simply react. When something's coming in, whatever it is, then you react to it with something that your mind has previously decided, yes, this works for me. And that method of training is the sort of baseline principle on which Chonky Kwan training is done. Wow, I need drinks, I need coffee. Talking so much. If there were more people here, we could all have conversations and you could tell me something instead of me just talking at you all the time. But, like I said before, it's a great platform that we can all, get together and use it. It's just sad that it's only James and I who seem to take advantage of the technology. I know if I want a private session with my instructor, for example, who's ninth Dan, I think it's something like 85, £90 an hour for a private session with someone who's a grandmaster, the top, the highest grade he can be in the Taekwondo field. And if you want his time and his wisdom and his guidance, and to just focus on you, talking to you, looking at you, and dealing with whatever it is that you need correcting, that's about 85, £90 an hour. And to be honest, that's nothing. I know £90 might sound a lot, but you could pay a lot more for something a lot less. So, for example, our children do gymnastics, and what we pay for gymnastics per month is a lot more than that. And they're in a group of people, and they're not always, the coaches don't always talk to them every lesson because they can't deal with there's too many students in the class. So you're paying a lot of money for people to just basically do a fitness class or to just be involved. And, there's lots of good things that it involves. But if you're talking about value for money, certainly from my perspective, because I know the depth of the martial arts and I know how important it is to have quality, valuable time and tuition from someone who is an expert in their field and can help me, then what would you pay? What wouldn't you pay? So yeah. But Master Davis is he doesn't like doing private lessons because he likes to he doesn't like to have people think that they're special. Part of his training is to make sure that everyone stays grounded. So if he thought that you were special by having a private lesson, he'd probably just kick you out of the club because ego is the last thing that he'd want to entertain in a student. Okay, James has got one for us. Looking at grandmasters on YouTube is much cheaper. Do you see, people, what I have to put up with? Do you see can you quantify what my life must be like and the class that I teach? This is the kind of much cheaper, but a private lesson, hands-on, would be very beneficial. I've given private lessons in the past, lots of them, and it's like what I say to my students is if you went to a class, if I went to a class, maybe I was going to say maybe it's dependent on the grade of the student, but to be honest, I don't think it matters. The value of what I'm going to say, I don't think it matters. If I could pay to go to a class with a grandmaster of such quality as, say, Master Davis, who is just a Taekwondo student, we're all just students, but Master Davis won't entertain any other art. He is, if you cut him in half, it would say Taekwondo, like Blackpool Rock. If I could go to a class with someone like him and there was no physical lesson, we were just sat there talking for the whole lesson, or he was just talking at us like I'm doing using this medium. Again, there isn't anything there's nothing I wouldn't, no amount I wouldn't pay for that, because to have someone of that caliber give me their time and wisdom, things that they've spent 50, 60 years, collecting, and all the research and the evolution and the development that's come to make that person who they are, to then sit for 2 hours and have a conversation with them and they give you that information. It's priceless. Not only is it an honor, I mean, we haven't even got onto the honor and respect part, but from a quantifiable point of view about money, it's priceless. You couldn't pay enough for that. I certainly wouldn't pay enough for that. But the honor of, the hundreds of times that we've been out with Master Davis for meals, or if Master Davis comes down to see us or we go to see him, the honor of being around your instructor, or an instructor of that quality, is it's a personal thing, isn't it? It's very personal, because you could have other people who train in that person's club and they don't really know one way or the other who their instructor is or anything about him. It's just the nearest club to where they live, so they go there and you know they learn to kick and they go home. But if you actually have a brief understanding of the person and they give you time, then the respect and the honor from that is, it's almost unfathomable. I've trained for a long time, and I find it difficult um, to put into words the level of respect that should be afforded to people who have given their life to developing themselves and then given that back to other people for pence, for next to nothing. Almost, in fact, Master Davis many a times has spent time with me and hasn't cost me a penny, and yet I've had hours time with him talking. Right, what's James got? So James is asking, are Wednesday nights almost a private class? Private classes don't have to be for just one individual. I've taught them in the past where it's been a family where most of the time it's a single person. But if you have a class like my Wednesday class is just two seniors, and effectively that's a private class. So with me, at my grade, I think 75 or 80 pounds an hour. And by the time, all in all, it's about a 2 hour class with all the bits. So that's £160 a person, £160 for that class. And there's two people. So that's a lot of money James owes me. I think we should look into that at some point. But no, that's what I'm talking about. So if you look at that now, people who have spent their life doing the arts and understand the benefits given them and the luxury, virtually, academically, um, you know, if you should want to, if it's had enough of an impact on your character, it should make you want to give back. Which is why when I teach my classes, if I have 2 students or 20 students, it's just a set class fee. I don't do private tuitions anymore, and I don't charge students more just because there's less of the students in the room. So, um, but I guess if a student wanted a private lesson where it was completely 100% just about them, and my only job was to focus on their imperfections or flaws, be it physical, technical, psychological, emotional, um, then that would be different. And there is a charge for that, but I think that's more because you're doing more of a service, so you're going off just physical, and you go are complementary to what they're doing, rather than just saying, "Can you look at my patterns and make sure the moves are correct?" Um, I also wouldn't give private lessons to people if they were asking for something that could be basically covered in class. So if we learned, we don't do patterns in class anymore. But if we were doing patterns or katas and someone said, "Can I have a private lesson so that you can help me master my pattern?" You know, um, I wouldn't say yes. Okay, give me £80, and I'll teach you for an hour and make your pattern better. I'd say no. We'll be doing patterns in class next week. Work harder. You know, it's not a money making thing. It's not a business. If you can fix it in your normal class, then do it there. If you need something extra, like this is a private lesson. This is me giving my time to people. Whoever's watching this, I'm not charging for this. I'm not making any money from this, but I'm still giving people my time. James can ask me questions. I give him the answers, and then we can move on from there. So it's not about money. To me, it's not about money. It might be to someone else. Um, what would the cost be, sir? James is asking. For James, it would be £325 per 15 minutes, um, give or take. But on average, private lessons, there is a thing. I do have a sheet somewhere, um, from the Chunky Corners watching this, and they do want that sheet. I can provide you with that if you want it. Um, but we have a list, a criterion, if you like, and it has private lesson prices depending on the grade of the person that you want to hire effectively for that hour. So if you wanted to work on your fitness with a martial arts feel to it, rather than just going to the gym and doing press ups, if you wanted to do martial fitness that was specific to training, you might say, well, a first dan would do for that. So could I hire a first dan in the class? And the first dan is something like, I can't remember it off the top of my head, but it's something like £16 an hour to hire a first dan. So that first dan would put you through your paces, whatever it is that you need for that hour. And the higher up the grades, it gets second dan, third dan, fourth dan. So if you were to hire, we have a third dan, and if you wanted to hire him, I think that's something like £35, £40, whatever it is. I can't remember. So you would hire him, make a date when you can both meet, and then depending on what it was you wanted to learn, if it was going to be a Q&A, if it was a conversation question and answer thing, you could arrange to meet somewhere socially or at someone's home. Or if it was going to be something physical, you wanted something addressed from a combat point of view, say, then that would have to be in the dojang or the dojo. So you would have to hire the hall, and then you would pay that downgrade their fee, and they would teach you that hour. So that's generally how it works. James is laughing. He's always laughing. He's always smiling. I'm not sure, if there might not be something wrong with him. He's always so happy. He's one of those, when he walks in the room, I think even if he's had a bad day, he's always smiling, which is good. It's very nice. Um, so yeah, but there's a price list depending on the grade of person you want to hire, and that's because the grade will generally signify the level of experience of the person. Now you could have someone who's a second dan and trained for 90 years, and they've got the experience and knowledge of a ninth dan, but they just never took the grades. But generally, a second dan will have second dan knowledge, third dan, and so on. So when you hire someone of a certain grade, it would need to be of a grade that is capable of responsibly answering the questions or doing the tasks that you want to achieve from their supervision. So, and there is a price list somewhere, but I've always tended to try and stay away from it because uh, most things can be achieved in class, either with Q&A or just with general practice. Funny enough, James has put a comment on. Why have I got sniffling all of a sudden? The main thing that I want to improve, James says, is dealing with kicks and more so punches coming in. I always tend to shy off something that I feel I really. You don't get to a certain grade and there isn't anything you need to work on anymore. I couldn't even say that without laughing then. Um, Grades signify a level of understanding. And although they stop at a certain grade, they that doesn't mean that there's no further knowledge to learn. There's always more to learn, and regardless of belt, there will always be something that we need to improve on, or something we need to add, or quite often something we need to take away, something we need to get rid of. And if you're blue belt or first dan or fifth dan or eighth dan, there's always something. It's just a different something, and it could be you could be a fifth dan and say, I need to work on my laziness. I'm too lazy. And then the blue belt would say, well, I'm not lazy. I don't have that problem. That doesn't make the blue belt better than the fifth dan. It just means that we have different areas that we want to work on at different times. Okay, I'm lazy. I want to work on that. How can I use my martial skills to help me get rid of that? Then once you've got rid of that, okay, what's the next thing? Nothing. I'm just going to enjoy training for a while now. And suddenly you might see something, or you might think of something, and you think, I want to get rid of this now. I'm too short tempered, or cockiness or arrogance perhaps has started to appear. So I need to work on those quickly. So there'll always be something, whatever grade you are. Just find out what it is, find out how you can get rid of it, who can help you, and then just go from there. There's no, it's not a race. There's no destination. It's just a journey. Something else. Let me have a look. Oh. So James says, I feel confident with counters and seeing areas to finish off, but he feels that one of his weaknesses might be dealing with the attacks. So we talk about this quite a lot in class. There are basically two type of people. There are the fight and flight people. So some people, when an attack comes in, immediately shy off, back off, and feel threatened, and then come back in for their counter. And then there are the other people, the fight people, who when something comes in, they go for it, they go to beat it. So you're either a fight or flight, depending on how your brain works and what you do, how you've been conditioned to respond to sudden attacks of things. Sorry for the noise in the background. This is what isolation gives us. Um, and both of them have merit and both of them have consequence. So they're not, neither of them are good, neither of them are bad. What we want, what all martial artists, regardless of style that you do, we all should be looking for the same thing, and it begins with a B. Do you know what it is? Balance. That's what we're looking for. Balance. So you don't need to be too fit, but you don't want to be too unfit. You don't need to be super fast, but you don't need to be slow, because there are situations that will require a slower technique than a faster technique. If you block too fast, you're going to miss the punch. If you block too slow, you're going to miss the punch. So it's about balance, and it's about a situation. What's happening in that situation? What timing does it require? What speed? What power? All of these things, and they need to be applied in a balance, because without balance, we don't have anything. That's the ultimate aim of your training from a combat point of view. If you have poor balance, and I don't mean you can't stand on one leg for very long, I mean if everything you're training isn't balanced, if you know, imagine a bodybuilder and he doesn't work on his legs, he just does his arms and chest, and a year later you see him outside and he's got a big massive upper body and tiny legs like that. He hasn't worked on his legs. That would look odd, wouldn't it? So that's what we're talking about. For martial artists, our main objective is balance. Everything we need to do is balance. The more balanced it is, the more comfortable it is, the more effective it is, and the simpler things are. Your life is simpler if it's balanced. Your combat skills are easier to apply and utilize if they're balanced. Your defensive skills are optimized if they're balanced. Everything that's balanced works well. Everything that's unbalanced has opportunity for error. And error is something we don't want in a combat situation. What we want is success. So, is there another question from James? I'm trying to read through all these things to find. Oh no, it's just James. Where is everyone? James says, oh, well, it's. I'll tell you what I enjoy, the conversations that I have with James. Since James we have here, so we'll talk about James. Let's all just come in and talk about James. Um, it's like when you have anyone who's ever taught anything, you'll know what it's like when you have a student come in and you're trying to teach them a certain curriculum or a certain syllabus. Um, and you can teach Joe Blogs off the street. You can get them in, you can say, show me, this is how to do a front kick, show me front kick. And after a few minutes, they'll show you a relatively adequate version of the thing that you've just asked them to demonstrate, because you've just shown them what it is that you want them to show. And then you can say, right, show me this block, show me this punch. And physically, when they copy you, they will give an adequate representation of that. And then they pass belts and they'll move up, and then uh, they can achieve physically what you're asking them to show you. And the drawback to that is that if that's all they're there for, that's okay for them, but they're not really rounded. So for me, if a student came to my class and said, I want to be an Olympic champion, I would say, go to the class up the road in whichever art is in the Olympic these days. Judo is still, so go to a judo club. I think Taekwondo was kicked out for karate for the wrong reasons, by the way. Um, Go and do karate up the road if you want to be an Olympic champion. Chungi Kwan isn't in the Olympics for a start, so you're not going to be an Olympic champion here. Also, we're not a sport, so you're not going to be a sports person by training here. What you will get from training with us is this, and then we would give them a list. And if those things are something that you want to achieve, then this is the place for you to train. And if it isn't, then nice to meet you, off you go. And then we move on. So as students train and they come up the grades, even in Chongyi Kwan, I see students for the last 17 years that the club's been open. I've seen students come up the grades, and all they've done really is focus on the physical skills. They haven't wanted to delve any deeper into what it means to be a martial artist. They either just want to be fit, or they just want to learn to fight, or they just want to learn to defend themselves. And these are all respectable skills to want to achieve. But it's a bit like running in a beautiful country lane, and wearing blinkers, and you can't see the fields and the hills and the trees and all the things that makes it nice. You're just focused on this one drive, and so much is missing. So I try to tell the students in the class, don't be um, focused on anything. Come to class and allow yourself to absorb what's being offered, what's on offer to you as a student. And if you're lacking in something, then me or one of the other black belts will say to you, have you considered looking at this? Because um, you seem to be lacking this, or you don't have enough of that. And then from there, you could say, oh, yeah, okay, I need to work on that. And then I'll add that to the rest of my things. And then the more rounded you become as a student. If that isn't done, and you're just the physical, then it's a disservice to yourself, because you haven't taken enough from the instructors who are offering you much more than you're taking. So, um, if I say to you, if I was saying to, if I thought a student was lacking something, I might say, I want you to write me a piece of work. Can you go away and write me a minimum of 1,000 words? Whatever it was that I was asking them to write, I would determine whether 500 words or 1,000 words is the minimum that they would need to write in order to tell me enough of what it is that I want to hear them saying. Um, they could write a lot more than that if they needed to, but I would put a minimum on. So if I said, go away and write uh, an article on respect, why is respect important? Why is the showing of respect important? And how does the respect that you show to your peers, to your classmates, differ from the respect that you show to the class instructors? Or how would that differ if you were talking to that instructor's instructor? Or is there any difference? And how do you demonstrate that respect? And at what level do you think it's enough respect? And all of these things. So write that in something and give it back to me. And then if it was something that I thought the student was lacking and I wasn't seeing enough of it being demonstrated, then the writing of this would give me an opportunity to look and say, right, okay, I see what that student's thinking now, and I see where they're coming from, and I see why that seems to be missing or lacking. And that helps me. It's a tool that I can then use to help further the development of the student. So that's one sort of modality, if you like, one method of allowing to see past the student's guard, past the mask or the image that they show of who they say they are. If they write something, then it's just they're allowing you to see a little bit more of them, and then it facilitates an altering of the way you approach the learning of that student. Just things like that. Right, well, it's been 45 minutes, and the one last week was 45 minutes. And I think I think James is probably ready for a coffee. I know I am. This isolation thing is, it's frustrating for all of us. It's stopping us all from doing the things that we want to do. But of course, it's the best course of action in the current times to keep us all healthy and safe. I miss being with my students tremendously. I love being with my family as much as I am because that never happens because we're all so busy with our lives. So I'm blessed there, but I really miss going to class and being with my students and watching them learn and train and develop and be able to pick things out and say no, work on this and stop doing that. So I miss that, and I miss being around the students. But this type of technology really does create ways of interacting. Even if on WhatsApp, for example, when you're on WhatsApp, if you click the video and then it makes a FaceTime type call, and then when they answer, and then you're sort of looking at each other, having a conversation and talking as if you're face to face, somewhere. So similar to Skype. So there's all these opportunities where we could be engaging, but it's not happening at the minute. Students aren't taking advantage of it. It's just me and James. Um, I know we've had some students who've been unwell recently. Um, Thankfully, hopefully, nothing to do with the current climate. Um, but it would be nice if the parents, I think, got involved a bit more because I'm sure they have tons of questions um, that could be being answered in forums like this. So maybe as time goes on, we can encourage them to take part in future discussions. So thank you for James turning up. Just James and I today. As usual, this will turn into a video once the live stream ends, and so it can be watched back, multiple times after that. But if you do have any questions, if you've watched this video late or you couldn't write them in the chat room today, then you can always email me with your questions or you can give me a call. Um, Remember, if you're a student of mine, then it's 24/7. You're not just my student when we're in class. So stay safe, stay well, stay home. And if you need to give me a call, if you want to chat or email, please feel free to do so. And if I don't speak to you before then, I'll see you next Monday. Thanks, James. See you then.